Here we go.
What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations, and I'm the host of Epic Conversations 2020, Best Podcast News Award winner, 2018 Innovation Award given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. I also co-host and co-produce the only online show in the world for dads and fathers, sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. And you are watching Black Canada Talking live on October 29th. Black Canada Talking, where this is a place, this is a home where Black Canadians give their takes and POVs on things going around in their neighborhood, in their country, around the world. And also we spotlight great Black Canadians, but we have him back again today, Cesar Ndema-Moussa. Actually, I met him physically last Monday. Last Monday I met him. And man, him a big guy. I felt small beside him. He's big in a good way, family. So before we get going, some things as always, please subscribe to the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube and hit the notification button. Also, follow the Dr. Vibe Show on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Also, if you would like to advertise your product, service, or business on any of the platforms that I host, please feel free to email me, dr.vibe at the drvibeshow.com. And I think that's it for now. So you know what? Let's bring up Mr. Cesar Ndema-Moussa. How are you, my brother? How are you?
I'm good, Dr. Vibe. I'm good, people. Family, welcome. Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. How was your week?
Interesting week. We're advancing. Challenges, of course, but working, being there for the community. Roots and Culture Canada, we had on Thursday a speaker, Brother Captain, speaking to our youth. We had over 40 youth speaking to them in terms of the dangers of entering gang life as part of our program, in our program of crime prevention among Black youth. So that was Thursday night, so that's a very good thing.
Nice. What, from your lens, from where you sit and stand and walk and travel, what are the concerns you have for Black Canadian youth at this time in our history?
The main issue, and absolutely this is beyond Canada because of similarities, is a matter of identity. We have a very vulnerable youth that is living with parents who have known stronger systemic racism, and we have youth who are in a more integrated society than before, that basically can easily be fooled in terms of the acceptance of the Blackness because of the popularity, let's say, of Black culture, interracial relationships, etc., etc. So while it's easy to speak about, let's say, education, employment, the justice system, healthcare, it always comes down first and foremost for Black people to a matter of identity, knowledge of self, community building, and also being able to project oneself in terms of, if I see myself to be this type of, let's be blunt, Black person versus N-word or other stereotype, this will lead my behaviors, my actions, my associations with certain people, and the consequences that will come out of it. So that's what I always address to our youth about identity, whether it be leadership and identity, a sense of self, community building, because I always remind them, you can have Black-owned businesses, you can have a list of Black-owned businesses, a list of Black physicians, a list of Black anything and everything you want. But if you don't have a sense of identity as a Black person and a strong sense of it, you won't be able to value it. You will always find ways to divide yourself, whether it be over white religions as Islam and Christianity imposed by slavery and colonization, whether it be by skin tone in terms of dark skin, light skin, whether it be in terms of which side of the ocean you come from, uh, African or Caribbean or whatever. I give you a very quick example if you don't mind.
No,
I,
take your time.
I remember this high school that had called on to me to address the youth. This school had a particular issue. Well, it's not particular, but they made it very, for them, it was very concerning. This school, yes, white principal, majority white teachers, etc., but they have a strong multicultural student population. And yet they had a problem of black youth rightfully complaining of racism from some of the white classmates, and yet among themselves dividing themselves in terms of Africans versus Caribbeans, and among the Africans dividing themselves in terms of I'm from Congo, you're from Rwanda, and among the Caribbeans, Haitians versus Jamaicans, etc., etc. It absolutely sounds like I'm making it up because I had a hard time believing it when they were telling me. But these white principals, they did not know the dynamics behind these issues. I understood them, and the students confirmed it comes from the parents. It comes from the parents. How is a 14-year-old kid born here supposed to know about, supposedly not being friends with someone who comes from this other country in Africa or this other country from the Caribbean? It comes from the parents. It comes from the household, and then they are put in the bigger space of Canadian society where whatever the background, they're having to deal with racism. So identity for me is a core feature of everything. When we go to places like Chinatown, this is an example. I won't even take credit myself. A former chairman of an organization I was president on, he always reminded us of something, which is that when you go to Chinatown, it's not only Chinese who are there. You have people of different Asian communities who are there living in Chinatown. They have the differences back home. And even among Chinese, they have the differences within. But to the external world, Chinatown is a strength to reckon with in any city that has a Chinatown. It's not an accident why we see banks with Chinese writings, Chinese
Yep.
calligraphy, and it's
Yes.
not an accident why we see uh, white police officers are not harming members of the Chinese community. And even in some cities such as New York and others, you will find that those communities have their own police force to address issues within their own communities. The sense of identity comes first and supreme, especially when you're black in a world of white supremacy on the four corners of the world.
Very true. I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. Yeah. When you go to Chinatown, doesn't matter what city it is, you may see the English names of buildings, but you also see the Chinese inscription beside them.
Yeah. And it's very clear. They have the marker of the door into Chinatown, but you also see the strong sense of community. Like right here in Ottawa, when you go by Somerset and Bronson, there is a bank. I think it's a CIBC or Scotia Bank. It's one of those banks with the red emblem.
Probably
And,
Scotia, red and white is Scotia Bank.
and you see the calligraphy, the Chinese calligraphy. Where's the bank that has Wakanda Bank, Pan Africanist
Mhm.
Bank? Where is that? That black-owned black people bank. And please don't get me wrong. People looking at me, then Cesar, why don't you make it happen? I'm not a banker. I don't have I don't have education or expertise to come off here, even to pretend being an online coach on finances. That's not where my forte is. You see, but it strongly tells you about the strength of a community that builds itself in terms of identity. One example that I like to give in my conferences, and this is something Africans can absolutely assure you of this. Europeans, white people, they have had the world wars, they have the conflicts, they have the historical conflicts, the royal houses, and blah, 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 blah. Go to Africa. They're not dividing themselves. They live in the white neighborhoods, and they're not there bringing the World War One, World War Two, and whatever conflict from 100 years ago to divide them in terms of French, Germans, Italians, and British and Spaniards. No, they live in the white neighborhoods. I don't promote segregation, but I promote a strong sense of identity.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Well, let's kick it off with a conversation topic. And this is more stuff that's happening in regards to what's going on in the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
Ontario kicks NDP Sarah Jama
Mm-hmm.
from caucus after controversial Gaza comments. Cesar, your thoughts?
My thought first and foremost, before I delve into this specific situation, I've said it last time I was on the show, and I've reminded this to Black people since I think the last conflict was in 2021 or 2020. And I've actually been online, notably addressing comments made by the African American professor Mark Lamont Hill. So, this is an invite to Professor Mark Lamont Hill, my brother, by the way. Uh, any platform in Canada or the US, I am totally welcome to having a conversation, a debate with him, because he openly promotes that the Palestinian conflict, let me not say Palestinian, he openly promotes that Black people should be supporting, have to be supporting of Palestine. I oppose that. I am a former, very publicly, very vocal supporter of Palestine. So people are going to say, wait, that sounds odd. No. 2020, Black Lives Matter, during my speech, a keynote speech, I very well said it, free Palestine. I've presented on this, I've studied this in university and conferences, address it, and I still do, professionally do address it, by the way. I said last time that I did let organizations across the province to be mindful, to remember that they are there to serve people of all communities and to not fall into being pro-Israeli, pro-Palestinian when they have to serve people of all communities. This is Canada. But before I address this specific case, I just want to say, dear Black people, we do not live in a world where we see Israelis and Palestinians protesting, being pro-Haiti, that has been under oppression for over 200 years, or being pro-Congo, that has suffered close to 7 million dead. The figure, I think, in 2023 is 6.9 million dead since 1997. Much more people than all the dead of Israel and Palestine combined many times. We don't see Palestinians, we don't see Israelis, we don't see pro-Palestinian or pro-Israelis protesting for Haiti, for Congo. We don't see them protesting for African Americans. Truthfully, yes, pro-Palestinian supports the fate of African Americans because Israeli police do train white police in the US. So that's the reason why. It's not because of African Americans. It was the same with South Africa in the 70s and 80s. Israeli police trained white South Africans. Other than that, you don't see that support. This is factual and documented. We don't see pro-Israeli or pro-Palestinians protest for the fate of Afro-Brazilians who suffer a worse fate than African Americans. And Brazil is the most populated, the country with the most Black people outside of Africa. So we don't live in such a reality, and yet, and also we don't see a reality where people who are Israelis or Jewish or etc. are risking their life and their career for Black lives, and yet we have Black people who, very unfortunately, by taking a side, and I'm saying here, I'm not saying here go be pro-Palestine, don't be pro-Palestine, or don't be pro-Israel. I'm saying Israeli or pro-Israel or pro-Palestine. We are basically seeing Black people being hurt, going out of their way, whether they claim for moral reason. For many Black people, the support is actually purely due to one thing and one thing only, which is called religion. Black Muslims support Palestine because Palestinians overall in majority are Muslims. You go to Congo right now, like I said 2 weeks ago, you go to Congo right now in Goma, in the city of Goma, they had protests, people protesting in support to Israel. Where does that come from? From the churches. Again, Islam, Christianity, two religions brought to Africa by slavery and colonization and the exploitation of black people. So there was a case actually on Instagram. I was sent this. A black female lawyer will got fired from her law firm for having posted pro-Israel, pro-Palestinian messages that basically infringed upon her law firm stance and also clients. Right now, we are seeing in universities in Canada and the US are beginning to crack down on some of the pro-Palestinian student movements because so many of the donors to the universities happen to be either pro-Israel or to have ties to the Jewish communities. Besides the fact of course, anti-black racism present in the Middle East, including in Israel, but in Israel, you can actually protest anti-black racism just as they do have black MPs and etc. etc. To come to the very issue of this black NDP MPP, Sarah Jama, first and foremost, and again, this will sound contradictory to what I just said. I understand her. I understand her stance. She has Palestinian family members. So this is different. She has a personal take in this. If I had Jewish family members, and actually we used to have Jewish family members, but divorce happens. But if I had Jewish family members, close family members, 100% October 7, I would have been posting, tweeting. Uh, so she has Palestinian family members. So for her, there's a personal take into this. So what I just said does not apply to her entirely. There's a personal element here. It's very human. So my issue comes to this. Besides saying what I just said, I do understand her, but I also think that she is, to some capacity, victimized by the Ford government stance. Because not only is she being pretty much gagged, but she's also losing the privileges and her recognition as an MPP. This is an issue within the NDP, but also a larger issue in regards to the Ford slash provincial government, because again, there is a strong perception of shutting down a black person, and I should maybe even say further, a black woman from speaking her mind. The problem is that once you become a politician, to what extent can you truly speak your mind? We also have to be honest as black people who are making our way into what we can truly say why our white owned spaces, such as politics. I mean, the very nature of the parties are run by whites in power. The dynamics, the very model is very white centered. So I understand her 100% for the personal element. From what I understood, she didn't post something supporting the terrorist killings by Hamas on innocent Israeli civilians. That's not what I understood. She posted support for Palestine, but also because of her personal family, she did talk about Israeli apartheid and etc. other such terms. Wow, she has Palestinian family. How can one be surprised? But I really see this here as multi-layered in terms of intersectionality of identities. Yes, a black woman, um, you know, Islam as a religion comes into place, but also having Palestinian family members. I can't condemn her per se. I understand. Would I do I advise black people to do so? I've already said it. I do not. Keep the bigger picture in mind. Support, donate, but you have to be. And people will say, "Oh, is Cesar being a coward?" No, this is not being a coward. This is about being smart. This is about having a long-term vision and understanding. This conflict did not start yesterday. It will not end tomorrow. And this conflict, like I said before, this conflict does not concern Black people first and foremost. And yet, first and foremost, we are expected and seen to take stand. Meanwhile, we see, like, we see Black people who are basically burning themselves out for support to Israel and Palestine, and yet, have they ever shown support for Haiti? Have they ever shown this public support for Congo? Do they even know about the fate of Afro Brazilians? Did they only work for African Americans because George Floyd was killed, like so many people did because there was nothing on TV? You see what I mean? So this is, and this ties right back to what I was talking about, identity. We were talking about Chinatown. Please show me all the Chinese people who were protesting for Haiti, for Congo, for Rwanda. Where were all the Jewish people protesting for the Rwandan genocide? Where are all the Palestinians denouncing anti-Black racism in Palestine and the Middle East, North Africa? But we're having Black people burning themselves out. And I've evolved. Like I said, I had a very open, vocal public speech in terms of support of Palestine. This conflict, I said it before, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I said it. I will not be posting further. I will not keep bringing my people to have this public stance when we don't see non-Black people taking such risks, taking such stances. You know, like that expression that says everybody wants to be Black until it gets real to be Black. So yeah, I wish her good luck. I really wish her good luck.
Yeah, this is going to be this. It's really interesting to see what becomes of this. I wonder what would have happened if this happened. This statement was made by a white person. Would they get censored also?
That's a very good question, because I must say, I don't know to what extent would it go. There was the MPP for Lanark Frontenac, aka Kingston, Randy Hillier, who had been censored over like 3 years ago. I think it was 3 years ago, over his comments regarding COVID. So yes, it has happened. Well, not just COVID, also because he made racist, discriminatory comments. But in the nature of this conflict, 100% understandable that people are taking sides. But there is also a bigger question here. To what extent would this conflict be mediatized, be so emotional, so sensitive, if the Israelis and Palestinians were not white?
Yeah, and there's another aspect too. What is free speech?
Excellent. What is free speech? Yeah, because what is free speech? That's excellent, because I mean, you will have no that is an excellent question here in terms of not only what is free speech, but who also defines free speech.
Well, there you go.
I mean,
I think that's a deeper conversation on we allegedly live in a democracy and we allegedly have free speech, but that brings up a whole other can of worms.
I mean,
No,
you look at
because go ahead.
no. I was saying, I was going to say, you look at, for example, in France, where I'm from, what you end up seeing is that pro-Israeli protests are all being permitted by the officials and the police, but it's a challenge for people protesting for Palestine. That is unfair.
Interesting.
But
Interesting.
But at the same time, you look just across the northern sea in England. I don't like the term anti-Semitic, other anti-Jewish content. This makes is nervous. So this conflict, kind of, last year with Ukraine, the other refugees, who are treated differently because they're not white. This Israel-Palestine conflict in 2023, with so much more means of communication and social media, is bringing forward the notion of addressing free speech. It is people who are posting pro-Palestine who are getting censored on Facebook, on Instagram, and others. You see what I mean? So it's a great conversation for us to reflect. But, dear Black people, and this message is notably to Professor Mark Lemont Hill, let us have that conversation in terms of taking such public and vocal stance, even under claims of the injustices, when we are seen expected to take a stand and take risks for supporting others who are not taking those stances and taking those risks to support us. I've said it and I say it again. I refuse to support the cause of people who don't support my cause. That's not what my Pan Africanism is. People will say Martin Luther King talked in favor of Palestine. Nelson Mandela, Madiba talked in favor of Palestine. Malcolm X talked in support of Palestine. They talked about it in certain specific context and at a certain period of time, which does not apply to today. Let us dare to evolve instead of thinking conveniently when it's the 1960s and thinking conveniently when it's 2023. No, I refuse that kind of logic.
Okay. All right. So
Remember
we're going to
something?
take a quick.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead. Go ahead if you want to add
No,
anything more. I was just saying we're going to go
I
through.
was giving an example on what I just said. How
Go ahead.
one time on your show, I think I said something about how if I was this age in the 50s and 60s, do you really think I would be there talking against Abrahamic religions, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism in the Black community? Obviously not. It wouldn't make sense. I would be talking against segregation and against colonization because that was the reality of the time. 6 years later, addressing religion is something that we must do in regards to Black identity and Black liberation. So it's the same thing. We can't be in 2023 addressing a conflict that doesn't concern us directly with the mindset of our dear leaders of the past in the 60s, the 70s, were rightfully, very rightfully supported Palestine. There was the Palestinian Black Panthers. Absolutely. But the reality today, Dr. Vibe, they will be the last thing I will say because we have to take a break. But Dr. Vibe, let me tell you what me, Cesar, my Pan-Africanism, what concerns me. Because I think this is part of the hypocrisy of Black people. We having Black people who are saying free Palestine, many of them because of Islam, but also because of morality of a great injustice. Okay. We're having Black people saying they support Israel because the Bible says so and so. They're being socialized by the church and, Jesus coming back. By the way, that's a white supremacist ploy to support Israel. For those who don't know this, but that's a different conversation. But you know what's going to happen? I mean, it's happening right now because I think it was today or yesterday. The Israeli Prime Minister Bibi, Benjamin Netanyahu, said that Israel is going on its second phase in regard to fighting Hamas. Let me give you a perfect picture of what's going to happen. You're going to have Beta Israel. Beta Israel is the proper term for people we call Falasha, Ethiopian Jews. Falasha is an insult. Beta Israel is the proper term, the house of Israel. You're going to have a Beta Israel IDF soldier, so a Black Ethiopian Israeli Jewish soldier of the army of Israel who was going to go into Gaza and who is going to shoot or kill or risk being killed by a Black Palestinian Muslim inhabitant or defender or maybe Hamas soldier. You're going to have two Black people eventually, if not today, tomorrow, or whenever this week or later, who are going to kill each other over non-Black ideologies and a non-Black conflict, Meanwhile, both of them, in times of conflict as in time of peace, are victims of racism. Isn't that ridiculous?
Interesting.
I want
Interesting
people, I
perspective.
want black people, and I want Professor Mark Lamont Hill to answer the question: can you imagine white people killing themselves over black ideologies? And I'm not talking here
Mm,
about, don't give me the whole, yeah, but black white people fought against slavery under Abraham Lincoln in the 1860s. No. First of all, it was not a moral conflict, it was an economic conflict. So I ask the question again: can you imagine white people, Asian people, can you imagine non black people fighting and killing themselves over black ideologies, over taking sides with one side of what black people say versus another side of what black people say, and risk killing another fellow person who look like them over something regarding black people? This is not the reality of the world we live in. My
mm,
historical knowledge, my political knowledge, my religious knowledge cannot provide you an example. And yet, this, either it has already happened, but it will happen this week. Because in Israel, entering the army is mandatory, by the way.
yes, it is. It is. It is.
And for those of you who have paid attention to the videos of Hamas, October 7th, there were black Palestinians there. I saw black Palestinians in those videos. Dr. Vibe, we can go for the
Let's
break.
take a break.
I think that perspective, that's what drives me. And this is
That's
what I
that.
talk about
Not too many
identity.
people have said. I've not heard anyone come from that lens, and that's why we have you on whenever we can get getting the different lens. That is a huge point. As I said,
Thank
we're
you.
going to take a break, and we'll be back in about 90 seconds. And we're going to talk about another interesting story. We're only going to do two stories today, but we're going to talk about how the youth boom in Africa will change the world. This is a big story that people need to pay attention to. But Cesar is going to come back, give his lens on it. We'll be back in 90 seconds. Lock it in.
And that's what I feel like. You feel like you're the Harry Tubman of the mind.
I
I
am.
feel like I'm one of the Harry Tubmans of intelligent black people. Like I want to liberate y'all from like being left behind and ignored and oblivion. No, really, the
Yeah.
rappers get all the attention. Seriously, does anybody else feel this way? Like ignorant black people, they'll be all up, getting all the headlines on the Shade Room
Overly
and
sexualized black
over
folks.
like the twerkers and the just people that don't always represent the best of us, the diversity, like people like Dr. Vibe. Like everybody should know about people like Dr. Vibe.
They
Dr.
really
Vibe is
should.
he's trying to do good work for black people. Dr. Vibe from Toronto, good to see you, my brother. Dr. Vibe, everybody follow Dr. Vibe. He has a great show. He's very good at what he does, and I have a lot of respect for him. Okay, so let me hop into this. What's up, Dr. Vibe? How you doing? Everybody, if you see Dr. Vibe in the chat, everybody go follow the Dr. Vibe show. Dr. Vibe is a real smart brother and a good human being. I like the guy a lot, and he's very intelligent. And I think everyone should pay attention to what he's got going on. We got to shine the spotlight on the intelligent black people out here that are really doing the good work. Don't just pay attention to the rappers and the celebrities. A lot of these people are losers. Your true winners are your people in your community that are really having your back. Helping us to have stronger families and a stronger community. So Dr. Vibe is in that category. So you might see the Dr. Vibe show in this chat. If you see him, please go follow him. Okay. All right. So anyway.
I'm here, Dr. Vibe.
We are back. We are back on Black Canada Talking. We are with Cesar Ndema-Moussa. As always, he's giving his great lens on things. And for people who want to reach out to Cesar, his email is president at Roots and Culture Canada. At Facebook, you can catch him there at the link that you see on the screen. So, got another conversation topic, one I didn't know about till Cesar brought it to my attention today. How the youth boom in Africa will change the world. Cesar, really interesting story. What are your thoughts?
Well, basically, as I was telling our black youth at Roots and Culture Canada, not just I pretty much remind them of this every time I get to speak to them. The world is changing. The world is changing in terms of notably its demographics, regarding how the projections worldwide speak of the year 2050 as the year when 1 out of 4 human beings will be African. I did not say black. I said African. So imagine when you add the fact of not only all the black people in the Americas and Caribbean, but especially as we were speaking about Afro-Brazilians, Brazil, the country with the largest black population outside of Africa, aka for those who don't really get the figure I'm getting to, half of black people in the Americas are in Brazil. The world is changing. Demographics is a tool of measure of power and influence of, usually people speak of a nation, but here we shall speak about a continent, Africa. So many challenges ahead of this for this Africa and its youth that's booming right now in the world. If I recall from my reading, the median age in the Western world is of 38 years old. The median age in Africa is of 19 years old. This young population has a lot of potential, but it also comes with great danger. If you want me to give you some perspectives on demographics, Dr. Vibe, let us leave black people for those who are sensitive that we always talk about black people. If we were to go to India and China, in China, the one-child policy has led to millions of girls missing right now. Meanwhile, in India, the culture of favoring boys in order to take care of the elderly parents has also caused millions of girls missing in terms of demographics. What that eventually leads to is a heightened potential of social unrest, whether it be from sex trafficking and kidnapping of women, but also access to resources and birth rate, just as the very potential of armed conflicts within the nations and between nations. For those who think this is too bleak of a picture, understand that the two countries, if I recall, those are the two countries with the two most aging populations, Japan and Italy. Instead of resorting to immigration, because usually that's what nations do. You have an aging population, you open the doors to immigration for more labor force that translate into tax-paying dollars, but also service workers to basically sustain your aging population that have built the country. Population, white population, obviously. Italy and Japan, they're not investing in immigration. They're investing in what? We're talking about AI. We're talking about the fourth industrial revolution. They're investing in robotics. And they're investing into the robotics, the Internet of Things. They're investing into an integration of artificial intelligence and basically technology, the manufacturing and all that through technology to ease the burden of the aging population in relation to lowering birth rates. In Africa, it's the opposite. We have a population boom that basically, one would say it's quite varying. So you look at, for example, South Africa, where it is estimated that the birth rate is of 2 children per woman. But you have to be careful with that. South Africa is, unless I'm wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong, the African country with the largest white population. I think it's when Madiba got freed out of jail in 91, it was 20%. So today, let's say 15 to 20%. So this skews the numbers. But South Africa is estimated to be 2 children, 2 births per woman. You look at countries that we talked about, such as Niger, that we talked about in regards to the coup, it's 7 children per woman. So this strongly boosts the birth rate. So what ends up happening, people have to understand, first of all, that there was a very popular lie that was told for many decades regarding Africa, that Africa was overpopulated. And as such, you had entire campaigns to basically bring down the birth rate. Africa is not overpopulated. You look at the size of some of the African countries and you compare them to the population in Europe, you can easily see the size of the country, and you put that size of the country onto a European map, you can easily see these countries underpopulated. But what happened is that population growth comes with great opportunities, but also comes with risk, as I was saying earlier. And what you end up having is simply the fact that this booming population that is bound in 2050, that's pretty much 26 years to come, aka a quarter of a century, aka tomorrow. If you don't integrate this growing population into the building of the nation, it will be catastrophic. So, some of the clearly visible aspects of this population boom is, example, the popularity of Afrobeats. So, African culture, basically spreading into around the world. Afrobeats that also came from African identity, thanks to the founder of Afrobeats, the singer Fela Kuti. For those who don't know, Fela Kuti's mother was a Nigerian woman of resistance to colonization. That's how she got killed. She resisted British colonization and patriarchal domination of the Nigerian woman in the market, aka the economics. Again, black identity, economics, and power. So that's where the context of Fela Kuti's environment. So you have Afrobeats. You also are having, sports, culture, obviously, where black people are expected to be seen. But what you're also having is more and more, even though it's at a slower pace than what's thought, Africans entering technology. Just right now, as we speak, telephone banking is very popular in Africa. So, all these type of tools, but you also are having the fact of African nations, especially African youth, being more and more present on social media, bringing an African narrative. And when we talk about social media, let us talk about, for example, Netflix. This I actually got this knowledge last Sunday when I was in Toronto from one of our Nigerian sisters who was there. Netflix is investing more and more money into African narratives, and you have a Netflix movie there that I promised myself to watch. I've put it on my list. The Black Book. The Black Book is called. Um, these African narratives becoming more popular, bringing a different narratives to the constant plight of poverty, famine, disease, and Africans people dominated by Christianity or Islam.
Can I just interrupt you for a second, Cesar? So I did. So people see me hit my head. So it is. You are correct. The country that has the largest white population on the African continent is South Africa. Just did some research. The other thing I'm wondering here is, isn't it interesting with this population boom with young Africans, how China is making such okay, because I follow the money. I'm going, oh, so is this add to China's aggression into the African continent?
And you see where I'm going. You know who I think, because I'm talking about opportunities, but also risk. Right now, in Africa, the continent, there is an explosion of Chinese presence. And I don't just mean Chinese coming to build bridges and infrastructures. I'm talking about buying lands. So basically, China, but not just China, by the way, China and other countries buying lands in Africa for their own agricultural development to feed their populations. Can you imagine an African nation buying land in China to grow crops to feed the African nation?
Okay, so this is very similar to what's happened in Jamaica. Because I don't know
Yes.
if you like how
Oh, I
you
know
see
this.
that, like marijuana, weed, Jamaican, like it's not Jamaica, rightly or wrong, was known as like one of the worldwide capitals, but it's not anymore. Like Jamaicans are getting weed from other countries other than Jamaica. So when I hear about the youth, and I always think about economics, I go, follow the
Yes.
money. So now China, and when the situation you just mentioned there, like you said, could you imagine Africans who are going to be starving because companies like China, etc., come in and take the minerals and natural resources to take care of their own people instead of
Mhm.
these young Africans who can help develop their country.
Exactly. And he goes further than that. He goes even further than that because, you know, I mean, we're talking 2050, but I'm still in 2023. Something interesting happened this year where, so on the news, we were flooded with Ukraine and Russia before Israel and Palestine again took mainstream news. But you have these African leaders who basically went begging, and I would say begging Ukraine, Ukraine's prime minister or president Volodymyr Zelensky and Russian president um, Vladimir Putin for peace, but it wasn't exactly for peace. They went begging them. Why? For the grains to keep coming to Africa in order to feed the population.
Feed the people. Yep. Feed the
And
people. Yep.
and a big part of the reason they did this, we are in 2023. 15 years ago, when there was the financial crash of the subprimes in America because of overlending to people who couldn't properly be paid, aka capitalism on steroids, one of the consequences of the subprime's financial crash was food riots in Africa. You have to see the connections and the impact it has economically on the land. The greater the instability that comes from people not being fed, when you add that with a younger population, it's a combination that leads to armed conflict and revolution.
Mm-hmm.
There is no
Mm-hmm.
French Revolution. There is no French Revolution if you don't have starving people and the younger population. There is no revolution if you don't have people who lose hope. Right now in Africa, youth booming population, you have over 100,000 people who have died in the Mediterranean Sea trying to reach the European dream.
Yeah.
Because when they're landing in Italy, they're not trying to stay in Italy. It's not Italy that's the aim. It's Germany, France, and England. If it wasn't that the Atlantic Ocean, Canada would be there too. And yet you're having people going through Latin America, Central America, and especially Mexico to reach the USA, but also to come into Canada, notably through Quebec. You have people leaving Africa going through the Americas to reach the USA and Canada. You have this youthful population where basically, if you don't create the infrastructures for labor conditions, it's not just about giving people a job, giving people a decent job with a living wage. So one of the things that I detest, and you can see this on Facebook, you have, sorry, not on Facebook, on Netflix, you have these very stupid shows that are called BCKs, brain cell killers. BCKs, 100%. Trust me. I don't play. No, no. It's
BCKs. That's the line of the day. All right.
I took that expression from me going to the gym and a former personal trainers, BCAs, brain chain amino acids, and I realized these shows, they're BCKs, brain cell killers. They kill your brain cells. These whatever how do you call Bachelor and
Oh,
other
well, no,
shows
let's not.
like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. Housewives and all that
There
stuff.
you
Yeah.
yes, those shows
Okay.
that basically under the label of entertainment kill the brain cells of people, and you have these shows, the African versions of African youth, and actually not so young, 30s and 40s,
Oh gosh.
flashing
Yeah.
their wealth,
Yeah.
and the money that they made, very often quite illegally, just like white people, let's be honest. I always remind people, the Kennedys are a rich family, they're famous and all that. Find out the story of how Joe Kennedy became rich, and then it will make you think not so much.
Bootleggers.
Bootlegging. So this is not some conspiracy thing. These are factual things. So just to come back to our African youth, we need to have integrated systems in terms of infrastructures, but also permitting living wages. Because one of the things that come, and this is very sad to say, those young Africans who are dying in the Mediterranean Sea, one of the things people have to understand, and of course, I'm saying this with the privilege of living in comfort here in Canada, but let's be honest. You have the community that mobilize the community and the family in Africa that mobilizes to bring the money for this young person to cross the desert of North Africa with risk of ending up in a slave market, such as in Libya and all over North Africa and the Middle East, with the risk of dying in the Mediterranean Sea, the risk of ending up in mafia, such as Nigerian mafia, but also white mafias in Europe. The community and family mobilized to give money to that young person for this very perilous trek. Yet that same amount of money that they could mobilize, they don't invest it in their own community to change the neighborhood. That's tragic. You see how, for example, we talk about the drug trade, Netflix, and I purposely say Netflix because everybody has an idea of Netflix, or everybody has someone has a Netflix account. Netflix has shows about the drug trade, and they tell you about the drug trade in Africa, but the people buying, why are they making the money? So we need to foster a sense of identity, because where it's easy to talk about youth, booming youth in Africa, 1/4 of the humanity, demographics being a tool of measurement of power. Well, we need to talk about the labor market. We need to talk about the leaders. Africa, we have leaders who are old for a young population. I'm born in Cameroon. It's 2023. Cameroon has had the same president since 1982. We have basically, and let's be careful. You can have a great leader who has been there for a long time, but the country has prospered. Example, Paul Kagame of Rwanda. Although we can absolutely criticize some of the politics and the how he addresses the dissidents, yes, but if the country is not progressing, it becomes a very serious problem. At the same time, we have to look towards the future in terms of, and I bring it back to identity. What happens when you have a booming young population that doesn't have a sense of self, that doesn't have a sense of identity? They become the targets of those other populations who can manipulate them, who can use them in the causes. Right now, Nigeria, just as Somalia, but also pretty much Western Africa, you have young Africans who are entering the jihad to spread Islam, to fight the yes, this is basically what's happening. Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab. But most of them are not really entering these Islamist groups because they have a fundamental belief and desire to spread Islam. It's because they're hungry. It's because they get paid in being part of those movements. It's the same reason why uh, Russia was able to recruit African mercenaries all the way to Senegal because they get paid. So these are the realities that we have
Like
to
I said,
confront.
follow the money.
Follow the
Follow the
money.
money.
Follow the
Right?
money. These
Follow
are
the
the
money.
realities. And if you don't have a sense of identity, you cannot take pride in the building of your people. You cannot take pride in telling yourself, why am I making that effort? Why am I leaving my family Thursday night to go address the youth for Roots and Culture Canada? Why is our CEO, Ketia Peters, and our program director, Marc Jean-Pierre, why are they doing such a great job when they have their own families? They're doing it because they care for our youth, I don't believe in anything, so I will not say they believe. They know the potential of our Black youth. And as such, they put in their efforts to give them the perspectives for change. If we don't do that, we become accomplices to the growing Black population in jails in Canada and the US, just as the growing number of Africans dying in the Mediterranean Sea, just as the growing number of Africans will become enslaved in the Middle East because they're going there to look for jobs. And then they have their passports taken away. They become physically abused. They become sexually abused. And they live there with mental health issues if they haven't committed suicide. So it's not to celebrate just that we have this booming population. We have to have a booming population being able to be integrated into the infrastructures of changing societies. And yes, when we see something like yesterday, my brother, Francis Ngannou, the MMA champion, who fought against Tyson Fury, the Gypsy King, in the boxing match in Saudi Arabia. We can take pride to the fact that truthfully he should have won the fight. He knocked down the boxing champion twice, and we can scream racism. They wouldn't have let this Black guy from MMA in his first boxing fight against the boxing champion, the heavyweight champion win. Sure, we can scream all of that. But the real pride we have to take is, and I say this again, it's great to know Francis Ngannou, but we need to know those Black people who are bringing change into the technology sector, who are bringing change into the media sector. We need to know those youthful people who are the political and community leaders of tomorrow. That's what we do at Youth and Culture Canada. We address the speaking skills. We address the leadership. We address the sense of history, the sense of community. A booming population that is not properly guided, that is not inspired, that is not shown perspectives of success and potential is a ticking time bomb.
I think on that, we're going to end it for today because I hear the young lady in the house periodically in the background. So I'm going to make sure that she gets addressed. But Cesar, thank you as always for taking your time to share with us. There again is where you can get a hold of Cesar, email address on Facebook. Any final words you'd like to share with our family, Cesar, before we let you go?
I would just say, pretty much what I've said, since the whole show. Black people, be and dare to be pro-Black first and foremost. That is an essential part of basically affirming yourself and succeeding, because those who are not Black, guess what? They are pro whatever their identity is first. Mm-hmm. So we have to stop trying to reinvent the wheel, because when Black people are doing that, those are inferiority complexes. It may be said under great morals and sense of justice and all that, but like I said, I don't support the cause of people who don't support my cause. And dare to be pro-Black, be pro-innocent lives, be pro-human, be whatever you want to call it. But when you went to see Black Panther and you said Wakanda forever, just as when you say I'm Black and proud, because these leaders behind me, even Obama, that some people will have issues with, they did say they were Black and proud. Dare to have a sense of identity, dare to be pro-Black first and foremost. And let us build together, let us prepare. 2050 is around the corner, and we say in 2050. I didn't talk about what's projected to happen in 2035, 2045. Some of these years, this 21st century, we need to come out of that century when me and you, Dr. Vibe, are dead. We need to make sure that we leave the communities, the countries that we live in, with stronger Black population. There is no such a thing as Black supremacy, such as white supremacy, genocide, slavery, and colonization of others. No. But we need to have Black power through Black empowerment, such as Marcus Garvey understood it, such as Malcolm X understood it, such as Martin Luther King understood it, such as Stokely Carmichael, aka Kwame Ture, such as Nelson Mandela, such as Patrice Lumumba, such as Thomas Sankara, such as Aimé Césaire, such as Frantz Fanon, such as Cheikh Anta Diop. I can give so many names, and I dare not forget the ladies such as Angela Davis, Assata Shakur, etc., etc., as our kings and queens of the past understood it. Black identity, dare to be pro-Black, first and foremost.
I'll just add two quick things before we let Cesar go. First thing, Black people, don't let anyone tell you what your value is. You have value. And the other thing is taking it from Dr. Boyce. Dr. Boyce Watkins talks about B1. Black first, B1. B1, have a B1 mentality. Cesar, thanks again. I know the young lady's waiting for you, so I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much, my brother. Take care, and thanks again. Keep the faith. All right, Cesar is out, and we're out. Another great conversation today. As always, we always like to say thank you for taking the time to watch us live on the replay. A few quick things as always. If you'd like to subscribe to the Dr. Vibe Show, please prefer you to do it on YouTube. Subscribe and hit the notification button. Follow the Dr. Vibe Show on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Also, to advertise your business, product, or service on any of the platforms I host, please email me, dr.vibe at the drvibeshow.com. And then finally, you can watch replays of this epic conversation at the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube and on Facebook, and the Dr. Vibe Show website, www.thedrvibeshow.com. So as always, this is how we close out. Live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get small to get stronger. Block assumptions, then aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. Love, faith, and respect. And remember to give yourself grace, and don't just manage your time, manage your energy. Thanks so much for watching. Follow so you get updated on Epic Conversations. God bless, peace, well, keep the faith, and walk good. Yeah. Listen.